Welcome back everybody to another week of Carpool Q&A. Today we are doing training men for mission. How you going, Pastor Tom?
Very good, mate. Love being back at church plant this week after a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, off during the Christmas season.
No, it wasn't off, was it? No, one Sunday we had a gathering, and then last week was New Year's, but back into the swing of things now.
Imagine doing church on a Christmas day.
Imagine doing it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so good. Such good vibes on Chrissy.
Yeah, crazy. Well, we're back again on the old highway heading up to Underwood. Today we're talking about, in the theme of ecclesiology and church planting. This is our church planting Q&A driving video. And today we're talking about training men, and particularly training men in a church plant context.
Okay.
And so, sort of first question, why is training men so important for a church plant context?
Okay. Well, it's important in every church context, of course. Ministry work is people. You cannot get ministry work done in the church without people. I mean, the church is people, right? So at every point, the pastor needs to be ensuring that future leaders and present leaders are being trained and raised up, which means that in the church plant context, it's not a future problem. You can't, well, it will be a future problem, but it's also a now problem. You will always need more leaders. I say all the time, there's no such thing as enough hands on deck. The horizon of the mission is literally infinite. There is billions of souls unsaved. There's thousands of people groups that need missionaries. Like, don't ever think there's enough guys at the helm. I don't need to be developed. Like, as soon as you are ready, there is a world of work to be done, right? So including in a church plant, like, not just the guys who are going to be sent off to be the next church planters, but simply the fact that every ministry is still in its budding form. You need the music leaders, you need the deacon leader, you need the future elders or the elders in training, especially that. You need leaders in evangelism, you need fellowship group teachers and leaders in the next fellowship group, and you need so much. I mean, so yeah, church planting from day one. In fact, obviously, way before day one, you always want to have in a church plant mindset, I need to be training leaders now.
Yep.
For the church plant. In the church plant, you're going to be raising up leaders, training them and giving them there's so many opportunities in church plant context. And so it's important because the work of the gospel Great Commission cannot be done without God's people. And key to one of the ways that God uses God's people is leaders. So it's important because the mission can't be done without them.
Yeah, very clear. We're sort of looking for leaders and people you want to train and mentor and send out. What sort of men do you look for in this work?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start answering this as if we're talking about future elders, like leaders in the official sense in God's church, which of course, as you said or hinted at, will require them to be men. In terms of elders and pastors, right, and church planters, because almost any task other than that, there's not really a type of person you're looking for. They don't need to be called, they don't need to be officially ordained, music leaders, fellowship group leaders, stuff like that. They can be of all kind, all over the map, and even women. So of course we're zeroing in on the real guts of church leadership, which is eldership. And your question was what sort of man am I looking for?
Yeah, what sort of what are the qualifications? What are some character traits you're looking for?
Well, I will just happily borrow / steal from Spurgeon and say the guys that you're looking for. From Spurgeon and say the guys that you're looking for are men who are called by God, not by men. They're not just being a pastor because they got halfway through a humanitarian degree and thought, hey, you know what? I might do ministry. Well, that a pastoral job seems to pay better than a street sweeping job, so maybe I'll do that. You're looking for men who are called by God, set apart for the work, because only by called men will God do his great work. But the question then becomes, how do I know what men are called? Because a bunch of guys will say, oh, of course, God's called me to the work. What markers Spurgeon looked for was, first of all, an all-consuming desire for the work. You know, the kind of guy who, no matter how many times he's told no, no matter how many other things and other opportunities he's got, no matter how good he is at every other thing he touches, he just cannot get out of his mind. There's a fire in his bones. I need to preach the gospel. I need to work in the church. That's where I want my life to be, serving the church, serving God through the work of the church specifically. I need to preach the word, right? All-consuming desire for the work. Secondly would be a sense of giftedness. You know, in natural and spiritual gifting that this guy really can teach. You know, he really can pastor. He's got a head on his shoulders that can think about theology, that can read, that can explain, that is good at talking other people through their problems and explaining the gospel to people. So that natural and supernatural giftings is absolutely important, or you just can't do God's work. So you have to be qualified in that sense. Thirdly, it would be a general consensus of the people of God. Okay? Of course, there's guys out there who feel like they know nothing more surely than that God has called them to teach the people of God and shepherd them. And the people of God are more sure than nothing else than that this guy is not going to be their shepherd or any shepherd, right? Okay, he has a very big head on his shoulders, but we don't want it leading us. So you want the people of God who will be the flock of the church.
Yep.
You want them to have not necessarily because you're going to be in that church as a pastor, but because they're the people of God around you. So do people in your church now, where you are now, where God has you now, do they think of you as a future pastor? Do they come to you with issues? Do they ask you what the Bible means? Do they bring their unsaved brother over to you to have a chat to? Do they like having you around so that you can answer questions and encourage them? And do people around you say, I'm a better Christian because I'm around this guy, you know? So do the people of God say and have a general consensus as you're developing, this guy would be a good, in other words, they should be going up to the pastors every now and again, that person, and going, hey, have you thought about making this person an elder? Hey, have you thought about making this person a Bible study teacher? He's a godly guy. That should be happening. So a general consensus of the people of God.
Yep.
Fourthly, there should be some measure of conversion work. This is what Spurgeon says. You never want to start training a guy to be a soul winner as in official ministry if there is no proof anywhere in his life that God has used him in the past to bring people to Jesus Christ. We want there to be some measure that God is already working in you before we use church resources, not money, but the time of the pastors, the effort of the pastors. Before we invest in you to bring you up as a future pastor, we want to see that there's already some work, that God's already come alongside you and done work through you. And then fifthly, Spurgeon would say a marked holiness. This guy needs to be head and shoulders above other people, not in piety. Nothing's more annoying than a guy who feels called to the ministry, so needs to prove it by the way that he's always using Latin words, never going to the movies, don't touch, fast food because I am a temple of the Holy Spirit, speaking like old English. Pietism is so gut-wrenchingly disgusting, but a genuine holiness. Like, he's not got the addictions other guys have. He's got his life in order. He's moving towards, or does have, wife and planted out kids. Like, he's just not caught up in the silly civilian pursuits that other people have his age. Is he more holy than them? And they're the 5 sort of markers Spurgeon would measure for seeing if a guy's ready to start his training. And on top of that, sort of, as I look at a guy's holiness and weighing up those other things that Spurgeon said, I usually also add my 4 G's. Guts. Like, does this guy have faith? He's gutsy. He takes a risk and just gets he believes in God and has big views of ministry. Is he gifted? Does he have some, natural and supernatural giftings towards this kind of work? He can deal with people. He can say no. He can command a room. He's got that grit. He can crawl through the mud. This guy can be bleeding from every part of his body, and he just keeps on pushing. He does not give up. He's not a quitter. He can get hit and get back up and keep going, right? And godliness. Is he not pietism, but is he a godly guy? They're the 4 G's I sort of look for in people and try and stoke up.
There you go. So we've got Spurgeon's 5 points. We've got Tom Ford's 4 G's.
Yeah. And mine are alliterated, so I am better than Spurgeon.
Yeah, okay. We'll quote you on that. Bring that back to you. Put it on a t-shirt. Yep. moving on.
The true Spurgeon.
Spurgeon's ancestor. Okay, so now from your perspective of sort of training men,
Yeah.
what are the ways that you think about training men and developing men? What does that look like practically? Is it an internship?
Yeah.
Is it?
No.
No.
No. No, I'm not a big believer in internships.
Okay.
These kind of 18-month, 2-year programs that get the church free volunteer work done for them with a carrot hanging over at the end of it saying you'll be an elder if you can do really good at this internship. Kind of a cookie cutter approach to developing men for ministry. I don't like it.
Okay.
Rather, what I think training should be is as on the ground and as organic as possible. It doesn't mean no one can know that people are in training. Like, these men should know they're being intentionally invested in other people of the Church of God so that they can involve, as Spurgeon said, their own consensus on their progress.
Yep.
That's fine, but what I mean is it's not like a degree where once you complete this, you'll be sent off. And every 18 months we just recycle back through the same content. No,
Yeah,
rather
okay.
it should be guys in their own corners of the church, according to their own gifting and godliness and maturity and age and life season. You know, some guys have kids, some are much more free, and especially among the people that naturally levitate towards them and gravitate towards them. Not levitate, but gravitate. Who's already following this guy? Who already sees him as somebody that they like getting alongside and getting in behind and helping out and being helped by? So that means that some people should be put into... So the way that we do it at Hope is we just find organic, natural opportunities and ministries for guys to serve in or start where their gifts and their personality and their weaknesses can all be worked on in the best of ways. So, you know, this guy, he can go and run a fellowship group, and we'll just see how give him 6 months, see how he does. Does he double the size? Does he half the size of that group? Can he start one from scratch, or does he need to take over one from somebody else? He can go and do that ministry. Does he give up 1 month in, or does he stick it out? Does he grow the team, or does he shrink it? Given these opportunities, you know, and so according to their godliness and their gifting and their natural demeanor, the elders who are the shepherds over this man need to be sort of testing him and stretching him and waiting till he creaks here or something pops there and go, okay, stretching his capacity, giving him different jobs to do. And as they excel, you know, it's very anti-New Testament, I think, that a lot of churches these days, or a lot of Christians, will hear language like merit-based promotion and say things like, oh, but that's not gospel. That's not how the gospel works. The gospel is grace. Yes, the gospel is sheer grace, exactly right. But gospel ministry is not the gospel. Administering the gospel is not the gospel. You're not saved by preaching the gospel. You're not saved by being a part of a church, but that's all important in gospel ministry. So gospel ministry is not the gospel. Gospel ministry needs to be merit-based. It's precisely what Paul teaches us when he says there's qualifications to be an elder. Why does no one put their hand up and say, actually, that's all fully ungracious? I believe that it doesn't matter how many wives the elder has or how drunk he is frequently. We're all saved by grace, so he can be a pastor regardless. Right now it starts sounding like a Pentecostal employment process.
Yep.
And the more adulteries he's had, the more he shows God's grace in our lives. Who is without sin? Throw the first stone. No, it's merit-based. So as a man sees souls saved, or as a man sees ministries grow, as we see God under the work of this man, because you can't separate a man's ministry from the man himself and God's smile upon that man. And it's not some easy black and white metric program that you just shove into Excel and pop out his preparedness, but you see how he works, see what he produces, and on the basis of his production and flourishing and growing in ministry, then then you promote him, give him more opportunity. And Jesus simply taught that. He's very clearly, he who is faithful in the little will be made faithful over much more. And he who is not faithful over little cannot be faithful in more. So as men are faithful, and they humbly work, they work with grit and godliness and guts and develop their giftings, that's when they're given more opportunities. And that opportunity is always under the watchful eye of the elders, because he hasn't proven himself as an elder yet. and therefore he's still a man under authority. So that's part of the training.
So not just faithfulness, but you want to see some fruit that this guy's
Well,
producing.
yes, because as we've said in other episodes, this is the New Testament.
Yep.
This is the New Covenant. God is at work saving people. You can't be faithful without eventually being fruitful. There'll be seasons of fruitlessness for sure, but faithfulness will produce fruitfulness. So if you can't, and if some guys are growing and one guy's not growing, and he goes, "Oh, look, I'm being faithful but not fruitful. God's just not smiling on my work." And we go, "Okay, well that's fine, but we don't want to vote you in as an office bearer."
Yep.
And we don't want to give you money to work as a pastor. You shouldn't expect any support from other people if that's going to be your position. So, yeah. And of course, alongside the organic, natural opportunities of ministry, so they're in the trenches, on the ground, working, then you add to that times of teaching with the young men, or with the men who are getting developed. Take them aside, sit them down at certain times with elders on some kind of regular basis and teach them systematic theology. So important.
Yep.
Teach them ministry. That park was terrible, Sam.
Oh, it's coming round?
That was horrible. Nah,
Look at this.
Nothing.
Straight on the line.
No.
Parallel.
You're teaching them systematic theology, you're teaching them ministry advice and leadership methods. You're showing them lectures to my students by Spurgeon, which is the great ministry piece. So you're doing on the ground training and also teaching and developing in private.
Very good. If you're not getting trained at your church, come over to our church.
What are you doing?
Yeah. That's it. Carpool out. See you all next week.